Going live. We're live. Ugh, locks myself in. All right, I think that's pretty good. All right. See everything? Should I adjust it down a little bit more?
Yeah.
Just a little bit?
Yeah.
What's up, guys? I'm saying what's up, guys. There's probably no one watching, but who cares? We're doing this anyway because it's fun to talk about metal.
Yep.
The world has turned into a big ball of crap. So, welcome to a special edition. This is the second official episode. We've done the pilot episode. Last week we did episode 1. This is officially episode 2 of Those Two Metal Dudes. Usually on my right, my co-host is Chris Fanning. He is not here today. We wish him well. He should be back for the next episode next weekend. This is a special episode with my son, Oren. And so this is still Those Two Metal Dudes. We'll just call this the 1.5 Metalheads edition. It was originally going to be the 2.5 Metalheads edition in homage to 2.5 Men, the TV show. So hopefully you can see us okay. I know it's blurry, but I have a crappy laptop, so there you go. And I'm sure no one's watching, so again, it doesn't matter. And maybe you can hear it. Again, no one's watching, so it doesn't matter if you can hear us or not. But we're going to do it anyway because it's fun to talk about metal. So today we're going to do a different episode, obviously, with Oren here with me. We're going to talk and listen to metal. So that's going to be fun. We're going to spend an hour talking and listening about metal, but no one's watching, so it doesn't matter. Horns up. Okay, so so I'm going to turn it to my co-host for today, Oren. He's going to tell you a little bit about himself and his experience with music and metal and why he knows a lot about metal. Even though he's 11 years old, he probably knows more about metal and music in general than most people 2, 3, or 4 times his age. So tell no one in YouTube land about yourself, Oren, and your metal expertise.
Well, I have been into music for pretty much all my life, and I have played music for a good bit. I got into metal probably a few years ago, and I've just kind of fell in love with it and just really like it. And I have collected billions of metal CDs and vinyl.
Billions, literally.
Not really, but I probably have 100 metal CDs and quite a few metal vinyl. I'm going to be showing those off today. Yeah.
At least 100. That's a lot. He probably has more than that. That's a lot.
Probably.
There's grown-ups and adults that don't have that many albums, and he's got a lot, and I have a lot as well because I'm Mike Slayton. I'll just introduce myself every time we have an episode because, again, it doesn't matter. No one's watching. But I have 70 billion albums to his billions, and I've been playing music for almost 30 years and listening to metal for pretty much the same amount of time because when I started picking up the guitar and taking lessons and learning music and falling in love with the wretched thing that we call music, I instantly fell in love with metal as well. Just like he stated, I was probably 12 when I fell in love with metal and really got into it. So a little bit later start. So he's got a head start on me, but that's because I've been pumping metal in his ears since he was old enough to walk. So on to the task at hand. We're going to do some listening and talking about albums. I'm going to let Oren start off. We're going to do maybe, 3 or 4 albums at a time, and then we'll switch back and forth. So pick 3 or 4 CDs, and we'll put the first one in, and you can talk just a little bit about it.
I think I might want to start off with one of my favorite Neurosis albums, Enemy of the Sun.
Nice pick. Very good. All right. We're going to play just a few seconds. Which track should I start off with? Because I know a lot of Neurosis tunes are very long and drawn out, and we want to kind of get to the meat and potatoes of something real quick.
Maybe you could show a little bit of Lost, the first track.
All right. Yeah. Great track, Lost, off of Neurosis, Enemy of the Sun album. Dave Edwardson got that bass line going.
Oh, yeah.
Got the samples.
Always gotta have the samples.
I'm a very small number, really. How many more times would you remember a certain afternoon in your childhood? Some afternoon is so deeply a part of your being that you can't even conceive your life without it. Perhaps 4 or 5 times more. Perhaps not even that. How many more times will you watch the full moon rise? Perhaps 20. And yet it all seems ludicrous. Are you lost?
Awesome.
That track is a classic.
So tell us a little bit about Enemy of the Sun.
Enemy of the Sun was their 5th album. Am I correct?
4th.
It means a lot to me because it's like experimentalism, and it's just a lot of the songs are so heavy, like Lost and Raised the Stray. They're just so powerful, like Enemy of the Sun, like the self-titled track. And the last song, like the 26 minutes cleanse, the 26-minute drum solo pretty much, except like half of the song is just like this noise loop. But I still think it's a really cool song and a great album. Yep.
It is a great album, and
Yes.
I have a great story about that Cleanse track that he referenced, the super long. I got to witness that live with all the drums. Basically, the drumming portion of Cleanse. It was probably 12, 13 minutes long, somewhere around there, where everybody in Neurosis had drums on stage, and it was epic and amazing. And this is great. The albums that came before this were their first 2 punk hardcore records, Pain of Mind, Word is Law, and then right after that was Souls of Zero. So, Enemy of the Sun, excellent album, great pick, Warren.
Yes.
It's a lot of people kind of consider that the pinnacle of Neurosis is really when they transitioned into the post-metal, post-hardcore, whatever, genre that they sort of created unknowingly. And so what's next? What you got next?
Well, I think I kind of want to talk about the Slipknot albums.
Okay.
The 3 Slipknot albums, the first 3.
Pop one in. I'm going to start from the first one. Show the progression of Slipknot.
Yeah, the first album was like a lot more heavy and fast and new metal-y, and then like a lot of people didn't really consider that metal. But then they came out with Iowa, which had like death metal elements and everything.
Listen just a few seconds of this first track off the first album.
The intro. And then they came out with their 3rd album, Subliminal Verses, and that one actually had more elements of other genres, like rock and folk stuff in some of the songs. But they still had some really heavy tracks on this 3rd album, like Opium of the People, Free Nil, The Blister Exists, and then some other good songs that aren't really metal off of this third album are like Prelude 3.0, because like this, as I said, like some of these songs aren't really metal. They're just like kind of rock type stuff. But there are some heavy songs, like I mentioned, 3-0, Opium of the People, Welcome, Pulse of the Maggots, Before I Forget, The Virus of Life. There's a lot of heavy songs on here, and there's a lot of other really cool songs that aren't exactly metal, like Prelude 3.0, Circle, Danger Keep Away. That one is a really cool one. Kind of reminds me of like old classic rock type stuff.
Cool.
It's kind of eerie sounding.
Check out a few seconds of their second album, Iowa.
The first song again is an intro.
Cool. This is pretty much the album where they really went to the extreme side of metal, which is good. It's definitely my favorite album by Slipknot, and I'm only familiar really with the first two because they're the only two I own personally. Good stuff, good picks. We'll do a quick little few second listen of the third album. One I'm not very familiar with, but Orez, he just told you a little bit about it. Which tracks you would play a few seconds of?
How about the fifth song, Opium of the People?
Pretty cool stuff.
Yeah.
Some good drumming, good guitar work. Kind of reminds me a little bit of a heavier System of a Down, actually, on that song.
Yes.
Pretty good. I definitely would check some more of that out. Good picks. I'm going to move on and do a few of mine here real quick.
I'll probably get my next few picks ready
Right.
while you're doing that.
The first one I'm going to talk about, this is a lot of stuff I've been checking out recently, in the last 2 or 3 months or so during the pandemic and quarantine and basically being at home all the time. So been doing a lot of online ordering, watching a lot of concerts and videos on YouTube, and just going down that rabbit hole like when I was, close to Warren's age. And this is one of my new faves, Deaf Heaven. They're a pretty controversial band in the realm of metal because there's a lot of metalheads and a lot of metal purists and people out there that don't think they're metal or that they belong in the genre and don't like them for a lot of reasons. I've seen stuff, on podcasts talking about, their commercial success. Apparently that they've been very successful. They play in festivals left and right all over the world and really bringing a lot of people in these festivals and concerts that are not typically metalheads per se. And some people think that's a bad thing. Other people think think it's a good thing bringing people that are not typically metal fans into the metal world, and then maybe exposing them and opening that door so that those people start listening to other metal bands. So I'm one of those people that think it's a good thing. I think diversity is a beautiful thing in life, in music, and certainly in heavy metal. So Death Heaven, this one's Roads to Judah. This is not what a lot of people consider like their quintessential epic pinnacle masterpiece album, but I'm just kind of recently getting into them. So I have not. I've listened to it a handful of times, still digesting it. We'll listen to it a lot more over the next few months for sure. Not a lot of information in it. Pretty simple. It's on Death Wish Records. It came out in. Well, let's see. I can't tell when it came out. I didn't do a lot of research, so it came out sometime in the last few years. Um, it's a good album. It's kind of, I guess, post black metal, black gaze kind of thing that some metal people are not a fan of. Sort of mixing the genres of like shoegaze and sort of indie rock and that kind of stuff. That's definitely not metal, with the elements of like black metal and even some death metal elements here and there. But I like it because it's really unique, and the vocalist is pretty much straight up like kind of classic black metal, shrill, high pitch vocals, mixed with like that shoegaze, indie rock, alt rock, ambient, experimental, hard to describe music. But it's still really cool. There's a lot of melodic passages, a lot of melodic elements in the music, but still some very heavy, dark elements as well. Overall, the musicianship is great. Songs are great. Album's great. Pretty much from start to finish. I guess this is actually an EP. I think it's 4 songs on here, but it's good stuff. We'll give it a real quick listen for a few seconds and see what you think.
This first few seconds kind of reminds me of ambient.
Yeah, I was about to say there's definitely a lot of elements of like ambient music and experimental avant-garde party type music elements in this stuff. Long drawn out passages before it really
Yeah.
kicks you in the teeth and goes full throttle. But the blast beats and the black metal vocals, they're coming.
No, it's not. I think it sounds really awesome. Maybe it's an album. It's just the songs that you like really like. Just the one of the song albums that I have is my favorite, and then you have those songs that are like up to an hour long. So these songs might be just a little longer than sounds really depressing. Yeah, I like it. Very epic. Sounds very epic.
All right, so that was long. Sorry about that. Nobody's watching. Who cares? Why am I apologizing?
Yeah.
Anyway, so basically, like that sort of reminds me of. I love it because it's so very unique. I love unique bands, especially when it comes to metal, because there's so much metal that's been done over the last 3 or 4 or 5 decades that's just it's gotten muddy and generic in a lot of areas. You know, when you death metal and even new metal and grindcore, all these genres, they start to run together, and you know, there's 100 bands that will come out influenced by the sort of the Godfathers, and then a lot of those guys start sounding the same and generic. And so this is great stuff. I feel like this is what Pink Floyd would sound like if they became a black metal band. So
Yeah, I really like it
there
too.
you go.
I think they sound really cool.
That's my opinion, and that's the only opinion that matters because this is my podcast. So the next one, I'm going to play a quick second of, and these songs are pretty quick anyway. This is a band called Full of Hell. Oh, that I was looking while we were listening to Deaf Heaven. That album was recorded, it says, in 2010 and 2011. So I guess this album came out in 2011, I believe. This band, Full of Hell, this album is called Weeping Choir, came out on Relapse Records last year in 2019. I'm a big fan of Relapse. So many of my favorite bands are either on Relapse or started off on Relapse. Naming two bands that we have either talked about earlier or will talk about, Neurosis and Mastodon. Both
Mastodon
at one
is
point
my favorite band.
were both on Relapse. So anyways, this band is kind of a pretty new band. They've got a few releases out. They've been around for just a few years. They're pretty much in the grindcore sort of genre. I'm recently getting into them, and I like it because it's just really the name of this band. It sums it up. Full of Hell. That's what this band sounds like. And watching some of their live concert footage, this is another band that's kind of controversial in the fact that some people love them, some people hate them. They have noise elements. The singer plays with kind of these noise machines that just make basically noise on stage, and crazy, chaotic insanity on stage from the videos that I've watched. And the music is just as crazy when you just listen to it. Chris, who's not here today, but he'll be back next week. I talked to him a little bit about this band, and he's familiar with them. He said some of it is hard to digest, and that's perfect to sum up. This band is definitely hard to digest, but if you like crazy, chaotic, just evil sounding,
I mean, crazy
grindcore,
and chaotic pretty much piques my interest.
I mean, this band, I love them because this is crazy. This is some of the craziest stuff I've heard. I love it. So we'll listen to a few seconds, and then you can say, yes, this is crazy, but that's only if somebody was watching. So
yeah, but there's
Here we
like
go.
one person.
Yeah, I dig it. It's a crazy, brutal. I mean, really, they remind me of like Cephalic Carnage without the jazz elements. Because really, this band, you could put them in a bunch of categories. There's definitely black metal in there, I heard. There's death metal for sure, like brutal death metal. And then there's definitely the grindcore element in there. Just nasty, heavy, dirty, just crusty,
cool.
grinding awesomeness. So definitely. So I got a couple more quick ones, and then we'll move back to Oren. This next one is a band that has been around for a long time, and I'm kind of just now getting into them. There's a lot. There's just so much music out there. It's hard to listen to everything, and so sometimes there's stuff that you've heard of, and then 10 years later, 20 years later, you'd be like, oh, I'm gonna finally check this band out, and you're like, holy crap, this band is awesome, and I can't believe I haven't been listening to them my whole life. So this is Malevolent Creation, old school death metal. This album is called The 13th Beast. Really cool artwork, but that's kind of what death metal bands are known for.
Yeah.
Great artwork, awesome logo. This band's been around since, I want to say the late 80s, maybe early 90s. This album came out last year, 2019, Century Media. We'll play just a quick second. Just really good production, and just really good, like, kind of technical, old school death metal. Nice double bass work. Good stuff. Nice old school classic sounding, crushing death metal. Good production though, so it sounds, quality sounds better than a lot of the old school death metal releases from the 80s and the 90s, but still has that classic sound. This is my last pick for now until I'll pass it over to Warren. This is another band I recently got into actually because of Chris recommending this band. This band's from Australia. They're kind of in the deathcore genre, which I'm just now getting a little more open to. This band is called Thy Art is Murder. This is on Nuclear Blast Records, came out in 2013. This is their album called Hate. How appropriate, because my nickname in certain circles has been Mike Hate for years. So this band is just really crushing and brutal. Chris even said, kind of compared them to Suffocation. I could definitely hear some elements of that. There's definitely some technical aspects to it, breakdowns, really aggressive vocals, all around just really good stuff. Whether you're a fan of this particular genre or not, doesn't matter. Good stuff. Let's check out just a few seconds of it. yeah, awesome. Love this band. Great stuff. Got turned on to him by Chris when I was telling him about my experience with Whitechapel, another band in this genre that I love, and this was pretty much his pick for that, sort of deathcore genre. Great mixing elements of like the metalcore breakdowns with the death metal, and I think this band does it really well. I think they're definitely one of the best bands in the style. So back to Oren. He's got about 5 more he's going to tell you about, and then we'll get back to me. So, there you
So the first one I would like to talk about is Cephalic Carnage's Lucid Interval, which came out in 2002. It is a great, heavy, insane album. There's a lot of really good songs on here, like Black Metal Sabbath, Lucid Interval, Arsonist Savior, Pseudo Rebellion. There's a lot of great, heavy, crazy songs on here. The song Black Metal Sabbath, it's pretty much exactly what the name is. Like, literally, like the first 3 minutes is like a black metal, and then the next half of the song has like a a Black Sabbath riff with like some crazy metal screaming.
Absolutely.
It's really good. The song I would like to play is the self-titled track, Lucid Interval, track 11.
Great pick. He summed it up well. Great band, great album. Track 11. Great stuff.
Yes.
I think
Cephalic Carnage is amazing.
for both me and Oren, definitely one of our favorite, if not favorite, grindcore bands in that genre.
Yes.
I think for me, it's kind of a toss-up between Napalm Death and Cephalic, because Napalm Death to me is kind of like the godfathers of grindcore.
They're classic.
But Cephalic Carnage is just so creative and all over the place, and they mix so many, 15 different styles of metal and music, and another great Relapse release.
All right. This is another Relapse release. Probably one of my favorite albums of all time. Mastodon's Crack the Sky. It's a beautiful album with beautiful songs like Oblivion and The Last Baron and The Tsar. It's got some great progressive riffs, and it's just a great album.
Yes, I second that.
And like this one reveals more of their side to like long songs like The Tsar and The Last Baron, which are just crushing, powerful, awesome tracks. The Last Baron.
And on the next episode, possibly Saturday, we'll have Chris back with us and Warren again, and we're going to do another special episode, and we're going to be talking about Mastodon as well as a couple other bands. So. But that doesn't mean we can't talk about Mastodon today or on every episode if we feel like it, because they're a great band. This is probably my second favorite song on this album.
Yeah, this is definitely definitely my second favorite also. Oblivion is my favorite.
Awesome stuff. What's next?
The next one is a Southern Lord Records release that came out just a few years ago. It's a Suno album. One of their most recent albums. Is their second most recent album. This is their most recent album that I have on vinyl called Pyroclasts. But this one that I'm going to be talking about right now for now is Suno's Life Metal. It is just a beautiful, droney, dark drone metal album, and it also has like some elements of ambient, like on the song Aurora, I'm pretty sure. And the first song, Between Sleipner's Breath, actually has some vocals to it. I'm going to look and see who did the guest vocals. I'm not going to waste your time. But there was a female singer on the first song, and I just think it's a beautiful, dark sounding song. And then there's 3 other songs on it, because there's like 4 songs on this album because Suno songs are like really long. So just play the first song. If you're into like ambient type stuff, I would definitely recommend checking this out. That's
Cool. Very droney, very doomy.
Yeah.
Good qualities in
The next
metal.
2 albums I'm going to be showing you is 2 Mastodon vinyls.
And we're not going to listen to anything because we don't want to drag in our record players for that.
Yeah.
We'll just talk about it.
The first one I'm going to be talking about is Mastodon's most recent album, Emperor of Sand. And as you can see, this is a picture disc. It's probably one of the coolest vinyls that I even own. This album has some great songs on it, like Sultan's Curse, Show Yourself, Precious Stones, Roots Remain. There's a lot of good songs on here. You should totally check it out.
Agreed. Great album. Great band.
The other Mastodon album I'm going to be talking about is this Leviathan vinyl that I got recently. This is definitely my second favorite Mastodon album. It is a classic, heavy, and it even has like some elements of sludge metal also. It's a gatefold vinyl. Gatefold.
Beautiful artwork.
Yes, I love this alternative cover art. I also have this on CD, but I didn't bring. Wait, no, I actually did bring it. So you could actually pop that in. I did bring Leviathan on CD.
Okay.
So you can pop that in while I talk about this. I'm gonna show you the vinyl. It's a beautiful looking splatter vinyl. It's like blue and it's just some great colors. Like it's like this pinwheel type thing with these milky blue and white colors. I just absolutely love this vinyl. It's just so beautiful looking.
And we're just going to play a few seconds of this opening track because it's just epic, classic. It's very thrashy sounding, and it's one of the few Mastodon riffs I've ever learned how to play on guitar. Awesome stuff.
Great.
So as you can tell, we're both big fans of Mastodon. We're
Yes.
probably going to talk a lot about Mastodon. I'm going to talk about Mastodon. I have some Mastodon albums coming up right here. And a cool story, we got to share an experience. We got to watch Mastodon together at the Exit 111 Festival last year in Tennessee. And the visuals, the laser show they had was epic and amazing.
Yes.
And of course, the performance was great. It was about 30 degrees outside, freezing cold.
Yeah,
Worth,
it was like
but
10.
But it was worth it.
It was worth it
because,
seeing a little bit of that concert.
They were amazing. It's the first time I've ever seen them on a big, massive stage because I've seen them 5 times, I think.
I also brought the album that he's about to show you, Blood Mountain.
I brought Mastodon here to Huntsville back in 2003, and then the following summer went to see them with Clutch in Nashville and got to go backstage and hang out and meet Clutch, which was super cool. First time we saw him, I saw him was in New Orleans, and before I brought him to Huntsville and got to see them and automatically became a huge fan. And now they're one of my favorite bands and have been for 17 years now, I guess. Have their entire discography. Saw them in Birmingham on the Emperor Sand tour, and that was amazing. They just continue to get better as a band, and they continue to put on better shows. You know, that happens when you've been touring nonstop for roughly 2 decades. So, speaking of Mastodon, this is Blood Mountain, their 3rd full-length studio release. Awesome album,
Yes,
great
I agree.
artwork. I'll talk more about this on our special edition Mastodon Neurosis Slipknot episode when Chris comes back. But you know, everything's great on here. Colony of Birchman's kind of their big hit off of this album. They played it live on Conan O'Brien, first time Mastodon had ever played on network television. They got to play with Slayer, Tool, Metallica, various other humongous bands, and you know, I know they're fans of those bands, so getting to play with those bands on this record and this tour was great. They were in a bunch of video games. They won a lot of awards and accolades. This is still one of their best-selling albums to date, and we're just gonna play a few seconds of the first song, "The Wolf Is Loose."
Oh, that's a heavy, awesome song.
This one came out in 2006 on Relapse. Just awesome. Great album, great band. Next, Crack the Sky. I'm going to play a few seconds of the opening track as well. The other song that Oren mentioned when he discussed Crack the Sky, which I think for a lot of us diehard Mastodon fans, this song is their, you know, this is like their one from Metallica, you know.
Yeah, it's
their
like their
Freebird
big
by Skinner or
ballad.
whatever, you know. I mean, this is kind of their, you know, in a lot of people's eyes, this is kind of like this song just sort of epitomizes Mastodon. And I know the first time I heard this opening riff, I was blown away, and this whole song just changed everything. This was
same
a big,
here. Same here when I
big
first heard
shift
this
for
album.
Mastodon. Prior to this, they didn't do as much clean singing. This is the first album where Braun, the drummer, was doing lead vocals on this song, and just everything about this album is awesome.
Yes.
And one of the other few guitar riffs I've ever learned how to play by Mastodon. So
The chorus to this song is amazing too.
this album, to me, like my description, would, and you may say that's a stupid description, but I don't care. It's my podcast. In my opinion, I feel like this is if Pink Floyd and King Crimson and Rush all got together in the same room with Metallica and they came out and put an album out. It's like this prog rock metal. There's still lots of metal elements in it, but
Like
there's lots
in Divinations.
of prog rock and art rock and progressiveness and classic rock, and of course there's still Thin Lizzy is in everything Mastodon does. That's still kind of like the band that they sort of worship at the altar of, as do so many other bands. But my next one, another Mastodon album, The Hunter. Some people don't like this album, and I don't care. I'm not one of those people, and I think it's a great album.
It is.
And it went from 1 to 0, so back to 1. Maybe somebody is watching. I don't know. Who knows? Maybe it's
now
Chris.
it just went back.
Yeah, who knows? But here we go. This is The Hunter, and I'm not going to talk much about it because I'm going to talk more about it on the next episode. But this first song, Black Tongue, is really good. It's still very heavy. There's still elements on this album where they're going in a classic rock kind of direction, rock and roll, a little more accessible to the ears of non-metal heads. But there's still plenty of heavy on here. There's still plenty of metal on here. But there's, they had sort of their first like radio single. Hearing Curl the Burl on the radio was super weird, but awesome, because being a huge fan of Mastodon and feeling like Mastodon has worked for everything they've gotten, they've earned it, and they deserve success. So if you don't agree, I don't care. This is Black Tongue. So yeah, man, that's good stuff. Great album, great songs. Some people don't like it. That's fine. That's their opinion. I like it. I like everything Mastodon's done. I think they're just one of the best bands of all time. This one came out in 2011. This was on Reprise Records, which is a division of Warner Records, which is a major label. So this is after they had already kind of signed with Warner and definitely. We're building on their success, and bigger and better, and great stuff.
Oh yeah.
This next one, do a quick brief. This is another band I've recently got into that's sort of in that black gaze, post-black metal sort of genre. This has a female singer. This is Oathbreaker from Belgium. This album came out in 2016. Let's see. This is also on Death Wish Records. This album is called Rhea. Hopefully I'm pronouncing it correctly. I'm still learning more about this band, getting into them. I discovered them on the algorithms of YouTube. How beautiful a thing that is when you're searching for music and discovering good music out there. If it leads you to bad music, that's bad, but still, you can skip that. So this was I was watching Audio Tree Live, and through, various bands. That's how I discovered Death Heaven and Oathbreaker, and really like this band a lot. It's a female singer who sometimes sounds, when she's singing, doing the clean vocals, sounds kind of like Bjork a little bit. To me, it reminds me a little bit of Bjork. But then there's a lot of black metal in her vocals too, and she'll just go from Bjork, clean, melodic, moany kind of sultry kind of singing and vocals to just full on screaming banshee black metal type shrill shrieking vocals that will make the hair on your arms stand up. And the drummer's blasting and the guitars are going 1,000 miles a minute. So very creative band. They have a lot of melodic passages. They do acoustic stuff. Really cool stuff. I'm going to play just a little bit of this, and it's really cool how it goes from kind of very ambient, quiet stuff to full-on, terrifying metal, whether you think this band is metal or not. I think that they belong in the metal genre, so there you go. Low on time, so we're not going to play a lot of the music. Just talk about it.
I still got a lot of albums to talk about.
We gotta make it quick and brief. This first song is 10 minutes, 56 seconds. Or maybe that's the name of this song. Yeah, everyone has to name the song. Actually, I think it is 10 minutes. Quiet beauty to full-on screaming black metal. I like this band. I like this album. I plan to get more. On to my final pick, and then back to Lauren. For time after this, we're just going to briefly discuss the rest of our albums. We won't play anymore. This next one for me is a split that came out on Relapse Records. Hey, look at that. Viral Load and Putrid Pile. Love the artwork. I know you can't see it. But this is two one-man bands. These guys put out full albums by themselves. They have programmed drum machines, do all the work, guitar, vocals, etc. And they tour, they play festivals by themselves. It's pretty impressive to watch. You don't have to deal with other people, which is a cool thing. And both of these guys are super brutal. Put this in pretty much the brutal death metal or even the death grind kind of category. Just sickening, brutal stuff. So this first one's Viral Load, Sean Whitaker. Crazy dude, man. Heavy. is Putrid Pile. And that is another Sean. Putrid Pile is Sean LeCan. And this album came out, this split between these two one-man bands came out in 2010. Good, brutal stuff. I love it. It makes me want to smash things. So, next, Oren's got a few he's going to talk to you about.
So the next few albums I'm going to be talking about are Neurosis albums. This first one I'm going to be talking about is Honor Found in Decay. It's one of their more recent albums, came out in 2012. It's very heavy and very quiet at some times, and even incorporates elements of folk music into it. But it's still a very heavy, dark, and just deep, heavy album.
Neurosis.
Yeah,
Good stuff. They always put out.
awesome.
They always put out gold.
Yep. Some songs I would like to talk about is We All Raging Gold, Bleeding the Pigs. Those are definitely my two favorites, probably. The next one I'm going to be talking about is another Neurosis album, a classic Neurosis album most people are familiar with is Times of Grace. Came out in 1999. It is a classic to most people. It is a great album with just heavy, dark sounding stuff, like in the ambient noise type stuff in the background, like the Tribes of Neurot stuff. It's pretty cool. Pretty cool album.
Another cool thing about that album, and he's referenced Neurosis a couple of times already before this, is that the one time I got to see Neurosis live in concert, I think was around this period, maybe around this touring cycle, where they were opening up for Soulfly. Hatebreed was the opener, and then Neurosis followed, and then Soulfly headline. And so it was 99, 2000, somewhere around there. So I actually got to hear them play the track I referenced, we referenced earlier from Enemy of the Sun, and I got to hear the track off of Times of Grace. So very cool.
The next Neurosis album I'm going to be talking about is their first metal album, when they started getting into the experimental post-metal, like after their two hardcore punk albums, Souls at Zero. Now, this one was my first Neurosis album that I ever owned. I have listened to it a lot over the few years. Some songs on here that are just amazing, that are just like probably my favorites, are Souls at Zero, Sterile Vision, A Chronology for Survival. Those are my three favorites off of this album. They're just so heavy and long, and just I really love this album. And like on Souls at Zero, like it has like this really cool intro with like piano and all these instruments. And pretty much there's like samples in between every single one of these songs. It's great album.
Great album. Great pick.
The next one I'm going to be talking about is a Mastodon album, their first album, their debut, Remission. I haven't really gotten to listen to this that much, but I know it is a classic for Mastodon. It is heavy.
Very heavy.
It is just a great album. My favorite track on here is Mother Puncher, because it has just this great riff and this great drumming. I just love all that Mastodon has done. I just think this is a great album.
Great,
The
great
last
pick.
song,
Heaviest Mastodon album. Sure.
yeah, and the last one I'm going to be talking about is an album that I've listened to recently, that I got recently, Converge's Jane Doe, probably their best album, their most popular. just heavy, insane craziness. I just love this album. Concubine is a great song. And the last song, the 11-minute long Jane Doe, the self-titled track, I just feel like that song is just epic. That's all I gotta say.
Nice.
I got a lot more albums that I'm gonna be talking about, but I'm just gonna run through those real quick.
Very nice. Good pick. Jane Doe Converge, awesome. And I'm gonna talk about two real quick, and then he's gonna pick a few more, and then I've got a couple records after that. We'll try to wrap this up quick because we're a little past the 1 hour mark. So the next one, Cephalic Carnage. I also have a Cephalic Carnage pick here today. Recently got this album, listened to it quite a few times. Misled by Certainty. This one, Relapse Records. I believe this one came out 2003. No, maybe a little later than that. Let's see.
I think maybe 2005.
I love these albums where they don't have information.
Their album covers are pretty epic, though.
Yeah, I should have done some research on this one. But anyway, this Relapse Records, it came out sometime in the 2000s. Yeah, the artwork, like he mentioned, is great. I mean, the insert with all the artwork, the booklet's just awesome. These guys are they're crazy. Love it. Crazy grindcore. There's lots of elements on this album of thrash, death metal, grind, sludge, doom. You know, they still have some jazzy stuff in there. They just kind of incorporate everything. Musicianship, top level. Drumming, I still think the drummer for Cephalic Carnage is one of the best drummers in metal. Period. Guitar work is just super proficient, technical, crushing vocals. Super diverse. You know, he's all over the place with the guttural stuff and high-pitched stuff. And there's a lot of guest vocals on here. There's clean singing. I mean, there's songs on here that almost sound like a heavy clutch. And then there's stuff that's like straight up, you know, grind from the depths of hell. And just, man, great stuff. Last CD here. Converge. Hey, I've got a Converge pick too. This is a really old Converge album. This is Petitioning the Empty Sky. Recently picked this one up. Saw somebody on a podcast, won't name it, talking about how outside of Jane Doe's Converge, no one cares about any of the other Converge stuff, albums before, possibly after. I don't know, whatever. I disagree with that. I'm just a big fan of Converge. This is definitely raw production. You can definitely hear, I mean, this is in the 90s, you know, Equal Vision Records. You could definitely hear more of the punk and hardcore elements and when they first started out, because they definitely have come from that scene. But I do feel like over the years they've transitioned into a well-oiled, chaotic, math metal-y kind of, you know, band. Some people still say they're not metal, they're hardcore. Some people say they're just a punk band. You know, Converge may not even identify themselves as a metal band, but I definitely think there's a lot of metal elements in this, especially all their Jane Doe and all their albums after. And I got to see them in concert once. Really crazy, one of the craziest live bands I've seen. I think this album came out in 1998. Yeah, 1998. So there's some stuff on here I'm not crazy about. Some of the singing and the vocals, not that great. Not a big fan of it, but there are some tracks on here that I don't love. But there is some good stuff on here for sure. So it's just fun, and I'm just a big fan of Converge. So I'm really trying to build on my collection of this band and be a fan. So back to Oren. He's gonna go through his CDs real quick.
So the next album I'm going to be talking about is Training for Utopia's debut, Plastic Soul Impalement. It is just a great, crazy album. The first song, Plastic Soul Impalement, like, it's just this weird, crazy, just creepy sounding song with like these like whispering vocals. Like, it's not even metal. It's kind of like more like to the side of experimental and noise music, but the rest of the songs, like, they're just crazy. And I gotta say, they have a pretty cool hidden track on here. I haven't really talked about hidden tracks, but there's actually some hidden tracks on some of the albums that I was talking about, like Slipknot's self-titled, Cephalic Carnage, Lucid Interval. But yeah, it's a great, crazy, heavy album with great screaming. It's just awesome.
Yes, I got to see them on that tour back in 1998, I believe. Great, crazy, wild live show. Those guys were insane and insane music. Good
So
stuff.
the next album I'm going to be talking about is Weeping Wounds Pain. They are a deathcore band that we saw recently, probably a few months ago. There's a lot of really heavy songs on here. I just really like this album. I'm pretty into it. It's great. You should totally check it out. The next one I'm going to be talking about is Zayo's self-titled album. It is a classic in Zayo's discography. It's just heavy and just great music and just great work with all of the instruments. It's just, I love Zayo so much. This album is just amazing.
Agreed.
The next album I'm going to be talking about is an album by Metallica. You guys might not be much of a fan of this album because it's definitely one of my least favorite Metallica albums, but it's still a good album.
Agreed.
It is Load. There is a lot of good heavy songs on this album. There's a lot of stuff on here. I think this is a pretty good album. It's definitely not their best, but it's still really good.
It's a good hard rock album for sure.
Yeah. Okay, so the next album I'm going to be talking about is probably Obituary's most recent album because it came out in 2017. I'm assuming that this is their self-titled album because it has the name right here on the front cover. It is great, old school sounding death metal. It's just a great album. I just really wish we could see them, but it's probably not going to happen. The next album I'm going to be talking about is Dream Theater's Distance Over Time. This came out only last year. This is their most recent album. I think it's a really cool progressive metal album. It's got some great singing, some great drumming, just great riffs. It's just a great album.
Nice.
And the
Love
last
Dream Theater.
CD I'm going to be talking about, it's not an album, but it is a compilation of unreleased and just stuff that Napalm Death did that they didn't really get to releasing. It is 2 CDs of music. There's a lot of really cool stuff on here. There's actually track 9 on the second CD, Omnipresent Knife in Your Back. The chorus has this Mongolian throat singing in it. I just think it sounds really cool.
Very good.
Okay, so the next,
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm going to be showing the rest of my vinyls now. As I showed you the most recent Sono album, Pyroclasts. The vinyl actually looks really cool. It's a see-through yellow. I'm not see-through yellow, but see-through pink vinyl. See-through pink. It's really pretty looking. It's a very droney album. It's got some cool drones on here. It's a cool album. The next one I'm going to be talking about is a classic in metal history, Metallica's Master of Puppets.
Pick of the day.
A great thrash metal album with great songs like Battery, Master of Puppets. I mean, pretty much all of these songs on here are masterpieces. Orion, the instrumental track, I really like that one too. It's just a great album, classic, great album. The last album I'm going to be talking about is Neurosis Through Silver and Blood. This is a double vinyl gatefold. It is a classic album in Neurosis's history. This is probably their best album that they put out. There is just great doomy songs on here like Through Silver and Blood, Locust Star. That song is amazing. Strength of Fates is a really cool song. Aeon is a pretty cool song. And they have like these interludes with like just these samples interludes like Rehumanize and Become the Ocean. Some other really good songs that I like on here are I and Purify. I just think it's a really great heavy album. That's it for today.
Great picks, great picks. I've got two more, and then we will call it a wrap. It's been a lot of fun, very enjoyable,
Yes.
discussing all these great metal albums with my son, 11 years old, and he gets it already. Very proud. So this one is a French band called Alceste, and that's another band in the vein of the Oathbreaker, Death Heaven, sort of black gaze, post-black metal kind of genre that they do. Really cool, creepy artwork if you could really see it, but if not, look it up. The title of this album is Kodama, Kodama. This came out on, I guess, Prophecy Records in 2016. Very cool vinyl. It's very relaxing to listen to. It's again really cool artwork on the inside. It's really like two guys. They have guys that play with them live and stuff, but and it's really one guy that's sort of the mastermind behind this. But really from top to bottom, it's a really enjoyable record. It's a good listen. It's very mellow. So if you're not really into metal, it's good to listen to. But it does have metal elements and some black metal elements. But it has a lot of like shoegaze and ambient, textural instrumental passages. A lot of melody. And it's very dark and somber sounding, which I think that's kind of what these bands of this genre it kind of invokes. Is kind of a dark, depressing kind of, like if Radiohead mixed, black metal elements or something, I guess. But really, really good stuff. And my final one, hey, looky here, another Mastodon album.
Which I talked about before.
Yes, so this one is the vinyl version of Remission. This is a double LP.
Vinyl. The vinyl looks pretty cool. You should show them the vinyl.
Artwork is really cool. The really cool gatefold opening up. Look, man, everything on this album is awesome. The artwork, the songs, production, it's great. It's definitely their heaviest album. Some people really didn't like much of what Mastodon did after because they started introducing prog and singing and more melody and stuff. And this one was just really just in your face and aggressive. But again, huge fan of Mastodon, one of my top 5 favorite bands of all time. And great album. But I like them all. And so, if you want to listen to some old school, heavy, just in your face Mastodon, put in Remission. And super cool, splatter vinyl that we ordered directly from Mastodon, and really good stuff. This
That's
one, their debut full-length album came out on Relapse Records. Let's get this back in here.
15 minutes.
So I guess Warren's out of here. We'll see you, man.
I'm just going to be putting up my stuff.
All right. So if anybody watched, cool. Thanks for checking it out. If not, it's cool. We don't care because it gives us an excuse to talk about metal, and that's important to us. So horns up. See you next week for the next episode of Those Two Metal Dudes.